The Terracotta warriors was found accidentally. One day, a group of farmers dug in well here, and they find some pieces of the pottery.
In 1974, a group of farmers led by Yang Zhifa, while digging near Lintong, unearthed fragments of painted clay. Curious about their find, local officials in Xi'an quickly called in archaeologists, who began excavating and soon opened a small hole. What they discovered was astonishing. The site turned out to be part of Emperor Qin Shihuang's vast burial complex.
So these warriors are all life-sized, like real soldiers. Also, they have different facial features.
Rows of life-size clay soldiers, horses, and chariots stood in formation. Yet beneath these silent warriors lies a secret historians dared not unveil for decades. What was it? How the army was found and why it mattered. On March 29, 1974, farmers digging a well near Xi'an village in Lintong County, Shanxi province, brought up a fragment of red clay and a bronze arrowhead. The group included Yang Zhifa, his 5 brothers Yang Wenhai, Yang Yaxin, Yang Kuanyi, Yang Peiyan, and Yang Xinman, and their neighbor Wang Puji. They dug down about 15 meters before the soil produced more broken pottery and the top of a terracotta head. Many villagers did not recognize the items. A few pieces were used as pillows, and other small objects were taken away. A manager for hydraulic works, Fang Shumiao, saw the objects and urged the farmers to hand them over to the Lintong Cultural Center. Zhao Kangmin, curator at the Lintong County Cultural Center, collected the fragments and began to fit them together. He reconstructed parts into life-size figures and realized the discovery could be extensive. He kept the work private at first because public announcements were risky during the Cultural Revolution. In June 1974, a journalist from the Xinhua news agency, Lin Anwen, visited the cultural center and wrote about the discoveries. The article reached national officials in Beijing. State archaeologists arrived, and in May 1974, archaeologists from the Shanxi Provincial Institute of Archaeology began formal excavations near the eastern shoulder of the tomb mound of Qin Shihuang. Fieldwork opened a network of underground pits. Pit 1 proved to be the largest area and displayed long ranks of standing infantry arranged in parallel corridors. Pit 2 revealed cavalry units, chariots, and mixed troop groups. Pit 3 contained higher rank figures and what appears to be a command area with a war chariot. Excavators found wooden chariot frames, iron fittings, and many bronze weapons. Some sections showed fire damage and crushed figures, which suggested roof collapse in parts of the necropolis. Work moved quickly from digging to conservation. Conservators built a large protective hall over Pit 1 and opened part of the site to the public on the 1st of October, 1979. The Emperor Qin Shihuang Mausoleum Site Museum was established to manage the pits, conserve fragile surfaces, and present finds to visitors. Archaeologists from the Shanxi Provincial Institute of Archaeology, national research institutions, and university laboratories introduced careful recording, mapping, and laboratory tests. Those efforts documented the way figures were produced, the use of molds and hand finishing, and the presence of painted surfaces under lacquer. The discovery put Lintong on the map for world archaeology. Estimates now suggest the wider necropolis may include thousands more figures, chariots, and burial pits that remain unexcavated. The initial well digging by farmers led to a sustained program of excavation, conservation, and study that continues today and provides a detailed window into the scale of the mausoleum project. The discovery also changed life in Lintong, bringing tourism and many visitors. The site was listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and museum exhibitions abroad. Excavation seasons still reveal new details about workshops, tools, and supply networks today. But beneath the glory of the Terracotta Army lies a darker question. Who truly built it, and at what cost? Who built it? Archaeologists searched areas around the pits for evidence of the people who built the army. An excavation team from the Shanxi Provincial Institute of Archaeology and the Emperor Qin Shihuang Mausoleum Site Museum uncovered work camps, pottery kilns, discarded clay, tools, and human burials. Bones and grave goods reveal daily life at the site. Osteologists studied skeletons and recorded markers of heavy labor. Many skeletons show worn joints, healed fractures, and tooth wear that reflect long years of physical work. Some skeletons display stress on the spine and shoulders, consistent with repetitive lifting. Laboratory technicians used isotope tests on tooth enamel and bone to trace childhood diets and water sources. These chemical signatures indicate that people at the site came from several regions. Some signatures match diets from the Yellow River Plain. Other signatures match areas to the south and west of the Qin heartland. Ancient records describe conscription and penal service for state projects. Field evidence offers mixed signals about who worked and under what terms. Graves near workshop areas always contained a few personal items. Other burials hold tools and simple objects that point to skilled craftsmen. Excavations revealed rows of simple living pits and cooking floors used by large groups. These features fit a workforce that mixed unskilled laborers and organized craft teams. Pottery kiln areas produced waste pieces and test fragments that match terracotta parts. Large wood-fired kilns stood where potters formed body parts and fired them in batches. Stone molds, discarded fragments, and clay sprues show a system of mass production with local variation. Skilled sculptors finished faces, hair, and hands at benches after molded parts were assembled. Tool marks on clay and fired elements show different hands and styles, which point to multiple workshops and specialist teams. Pottery fragments with maker marks suggest that workshops labeled batches or recorded craftsmen and conservators to reconstruct wheel sizes and axles. Metalworkers and carpenters worked near chariot areas. Archaeologists recovered bronze fittings, iron nails, and small leather fragments. Leather pieces show stitching and edgework consistent with chariot harnesses. Wooden parts rarely survive, but metal fittings and impressions allow forms. Painters worked in separate areas. Residues of pigments and storage jars show large-scale mixing of colors. Conservators found lacquer residues on clay parts beneath painted layers, indicating planned steps before final decoration. Burial patterns around the necropolis vary. Some graves are simple with no goods. Other burials include small personal items that suggest a higher status. The mix of remains, tools, and workshop structures shows a complex labor system. Potters, painters, carpenters, metalworkers, and laborers worked together under organized oversight from officials. Evidence points to both a skilled craft organization and large numbers of laborers who managed to build the mausoleum. But what if the colors that once brought these warriors to life hid something far more mysterious beneath the surface? The paint, pigments, and workshop. The terracotta figures were painted when they were made. Conservators found layers of lacquer and paint under the dust. Technicians from Shanghai Tech University and teams at the Shaanxi Provincial Institute of Archaeology used microscopes and chemical tests to read those layers: blue, green, white, and a rare purple. The red came from cinnabar. Cinnabar is a mineral of mercury that gives a bright red color. Craftsmen ground it to a fine powder and mixed it with glue to make paint. The blue and green came from azurite and malachite. Both are copper minerals that give a strong color. White came from lead or calcium minerals, and black from charcoal. A purple pigment known today as Han purple or Chinese purple was present on some figures, is not a natural dye. It is a manufactured compound that contains barium and copper silicate. Producing the purple required deliberate steps and heat. Finding Han purple shows that Qin workshops had advanced recipes. Below the paint, conservators found lacquer layers. The lacquer used is a natural tree resin or urushi. Workers applied thin coats of lacquer and let each coat dry. After several lacquer coats, they applied pigment. The lacquer created a sealed surface that helped the color stick to the clay. When soil and air changed after excavation, the lacquer cracked and paint flaked. That is why original colors faded quickly when first exposed. Labor in workshops followed fixed steps. Potters formed body parts and fired them in kilns. Sculptors joined parts and carved details by hand. Painters worked in batches. They mixed pigments in large jars and applied color to groups of parts. Teams used simple tools, brushes, and spatulas. Kiln waste found near the pits shows stages of production and quality control. Chemical tests used by laboratories included microscopy, Raman spectroscopy, and gas chromatography mass spectrometry. These tools let scientists separate mineral pigments from organic glue and lacquer. Analysts found animal glue and plant resins used as binding media. Glue helped pigment adhere, and resin sealed the surface. Tests at Shanghai Tech University reported very pure samples of synthetic purple and complex binder recipes. Archaeologists found large storage jars and labeled containers near workshops. These jars likely held mixed pigments and binders ready for painters. Traces of soot and ash near kilns show how firing was controlled. Modern teams use hyperspectral imaging, 3D scanning, and photography to map paint traces on each figure. Conservators record every layer before any treatment and careful sample handling practices. Conservators today control light, temperature, and humidity to protect surviving paint. They also document paint layers in detail with imaging tools. That work helps museums display figures while slowing further loss of color. The evidence of pigments, lacquer, and workshop steps shows skilled teams worked together. They combined the crafts of pottery, woodworking, metalwork, and painting to finish the figures for their burial place. But if those ancient craftsmen left behind such mastery, what more could still be hidden beneath the silent earth, waiting to be uncovered? New discoveries in 2024 to 2025. In late 2024 and into early 2025, archaeologists working at the mausoleum of Emperor Qin Shihuang reported several discoveries that drew close attention. Teams from the Shanxi Provincial Institute and the Emperor Qin Shihuang Mausoleum Site Museum announced the recovery of a life-size figure identified as a high-ranking commander. Zhu Xihong, head of the excavation project, described the figure as wearing layered scale armor and a capped headdress. Field records note a different pose and finer painted detail than the standard infantry figures. Excavators also uncovered chariot components nearby. Conservators recorded wooden axles, bronze fittings, iron nails, and leather fragments that match harness work. The wooden pieces were unstable, but left impressions in the soil that let specialists rebuild wheel and axle shapes. Metal fittings showed rivet holes and careful finishing that matched forms seen in earlier chariot finds from the site. Media footage from China Central Television and museum photographers spread images of the new pieces. Museums organized short-term displays of selected findings, while conservators moved fragile items into climate-controlled labs. They used X-ray imaging, 3D scanning, and microscopic study before any public display to record every detail without risking damage. Reports also mentioned a sealed deposit or untouched context inside the larger necropolis. Remote sensing and non-invasive surveys, including ground-penetrating radar, were used to map subsurface anomalies before any digging began. Archaeologists stressed slow, step-by-step work to avoid harming fragile layers. If the deposit proves intact, it could hold painted objects, small bronzes, textile fragments, or inscribed fittings that rarely survive in the open air. Small inscriptions and maker marks appeared on pottery shards and on bronze fittings recovered in 2024 and 2025. Epigraphers and conservators examined these marks to trace workshops and supply chains. Some marks match patterns recorded in earlier excavation information, which helps researchers map where goods were produced and how they arrived at the mausoleum. Storage jars and labeled containers found near workshop areas offer direct clues to supply and production. Researchers recorded jars with pigment residue and organic binders that point to on-site mixing and storage of paint. Kiln waste with misfired parts and clay sprues shows stages of production and basic quality control. These discoveries make it possible to link pieces found in the pits back to local workshop areas. Research shows close cooperation between the Shanxi Provincial Institute of Archaeology, National Cultural Heritage teams, and university science laboratories. Conservation, sampling, imaging, and publication were sequenced to protect fragile material and to preserve data for study. Museums arranged loans and traveling exhibitions under strict handling and climate rules. The 2024 and 2025 discoveries added detail to rank, equipment, and production at the mausoleum. The commander figure and chariot parts supply new physical evidence of command roles and chariot joinery. The reports also underline how cautious modern fieldwork must be when organics and pigments survive. But hidden beneath the layers of clay and pigment, could something far more toxic and mysterious be waiting to surface? Mercury, mines, and logistics. Ancient writers recorded that Emperor Qin Shihuang wanted mercury to represent rivers in his tomb. The historian Sima Qian wrote about the wide use of mercury in burial customs. For many years, archaeologists debated whether those words meant actual mercury or were only a story. Field surveys and laboratory work have since found chemical traces that link the mausoleum to real cinnabar sources. Cinnabar is a bright red mineral of mercury sulfide. Craftsmen ground it into powder to make pigment and to extract mercury when heated. Mining areas for cinnabar existed across southern China. Recent chemical studies compared mineral samples from the mausoleum with samples from known mines. The tests show matches with deposits in Hunan province and Guizhou province. Those matches point to the movement of ore from the south to the Shanxi area. Moving heavy mineral ore over long distances requires planning. Archaeologists found storage jars, labeled containers, and pottery with marks that point to an organized supply. These jars held pigment and binding materials for painters or ore waiting for processing. Transport moved along rivers where possible and overland on pack roads where needed. Rivers such as parts of the Yangtze and their feeder streams could carry bulk loads to central hubs. From those hubs, carts and pack animals moved goods toward the mausoleum. Secure storage and oversight were necessary. Records from the Qin and later Han eras mention state stores and officials who oversaw royal supplies. Researchers recovered pottery jars marked with writing that may record content or origin. Archaeologists read these marks as simple inventory control, a way for officials to track shipments and store materials in guarded depots near workshop areas. Processing cinnabar into pigment or condensed mercury required specialist steps and careful handling. Tests on soil cores and sediments near work areas show elevated mercury in some layers. Modern environmental testing looks at deep soil samples to see how mercury spread and how much material workers might have handled. Those tests do not measure exact exposure for individuals, but they do show chemical movement from storage and processing zones into the ground around workshops. The logistics system relied on many people. Miners, boatmen, wagon drivers, guards, storekeepers, and craftsmen all played roles. Workshops needed jars, tools, fuel for kilns, and roofed spaces for drying and mixing materials. Pottery with maker marks and kiln waste helps researchers map where pigment was mixed and stored. Those findings show a flow of goods from southern mines through transport hubs into local workshops. Material flow maps now link southern mining regions, river hubs, and the workshops near the mausoleum. These maps are based on pottery find spots, maker marks, and chemical matches of mineral samples. Together, the evidence shows a long supply chain. Cinnabar moved from southern mines into central stores and then into painting workshops. Officials recorded shipments and teams handled storage and processing. The scale of this work required organized transport, guarded depots, and craftsmen who knew how to mix pigment and handle mercury-bearing materials. But behind this intricate network of labor and logistics, what horrifying secret was hidden within the Emperor's grand design? The disturbing truth. The new studies and recent discoveries change how experts measure the scale and the cost of the mausoleum. Evidence now shows the project was a state-level effort with many moving parts. Production included potters, sculptors, painters, metalworkers, carpenters, and transport crews. Officials managed the supply, storage, and movement of goods across long distances. Marks on pottery and bronze fittings help link workshop products to specific sites. These marks act like labels that tell researchers where parts were made. Large storage jars and workshop waste point to central places where workers prepared parts and mixed pigments. Kiln remains show how potters fired batches of parts and how they controlled temperature and fuel. The human remains found near the site give a view of labor demands. Bone chemistry and dental analysis show varied diets and origins. Some people grew up near the Yellow River. Others show chemical signatures of areas in southern provinces. Skeletal stress marks and healed fractures record heavy work and accident rates. Many burials lack grave goods, while a few contain simple tools or pots, which suggests different roles and statuses. Moving cinnabar, timber, bronze, and finished parts required a large transport network. Rivers, pack routes, and carts moved heavy loads. Officials likely used river hubs on major waterways to move ore and jars to central points. From wagons and porters, goods were carried to the workshop zones around the tomb. Guards and storekeepers provided oversight for important loads and precious materials. The supply chain needed tools and fuel. Kilns burned large amounts of wood. Metalworking needed charcoal and bellows. Leather and wood for chariots required skilled joinery. These needs created a steady flow of resources into the necropolis zone. Records and field finds indicate officials kept inventories and wrapped or labeled goods for tracking. Labor organization mixed mass teams and small skilled groups. Large groups handled hauling, trench digging, and rough assembly. Small groups of skilled artisans did modeling, carving, painting, and metalwork. The combination of high volume and fine detail required strict scheduling, storage space for dried and fired parts, and work areas protected from rain when finishing paint and lacquer. Discoveries, such as a high-ranking commander figure and chariot parts, add direct proof of elite placement and rank mimicry near the emperor. These items also reveal a higher quality finish and more complex joinery. Combined with pigment chemistry and cinnabar sourcing, the evidence draws a clear line from mine to workshop to burial pit. That chain shows the state moved people and goods on a large scale to make the mausoleum as a single coordinated project. Estimates from excavation reports by the Shaanxi Provincial Institute of Archaeology and the Emperor Qin Shihuang Mausoleum Site Museum suggest thousands of people worked on the project. Laboratory work at Shanghai Tech University and national labs has increased research and conservation costs because fragile pigments and organics need special care. Field seasons require staff for recording, conservation, and storage, which adds to the overall expense and study. The Terracotta army still guards its emperor in silence, but with every new discovery, the ground whispers darker truths. What else lies buried beneath Qin Shihuang's colossal dream? Untouched, unseen, and perhaps too dangerous to reveal. One thing is certain, the past isn't finished speaking to us yet. We have come to the end of our video. Don't forget to share your thoughts with us in the comments section below. Thank you for watching.